right, we'll go ahead and get started, everyone. Hello, and welcome to this month's APTA Social, Building Your Brand. This month's APTA Social will focus on building a meaningful following and utilizing social media to your advantage. My name is Danielle Audain, and I serve on the APTA Sabad, or Student Board of Directors, in the role of Director. We have a wonderful speaker for you all this evening who is excited to answer your questions. And before we get started, I wanted to mention a couple house rules. First, please keep your microphone muted at all times unless you are asking a question. To ask a question, you may either use the raise your hand feature or send them to me in the chat. But remember that we want this event to be as interactive as possible. So please know that we will use the raise hand feature primarily, and we'll answer those questions first and then deviate to the chat afterwards. And now we would love to take a group picture. So for the APTA social media, if you all could please turn on your camera if you feel comfortable. And Sophia will count down and we'll take a screenshot of everyone in just a second.
Alrighty, everyone ready? We're gonna take the picture in 3, 2, 1. Okay, I got it.
Perfect. All right, now I'm honored to introduce our wonderful speaker, Dr. Deja Smallwood. Deja, would you please mind explaining a little bit about yourself for any students who may not know who you are?
There we go. I was like, I couldn't unmute myself. Hi, everyone. I'm Deja. I am a pediatric physical therapist. I live in Raleigh. I graduated from Duke Doctor of Physical Therapy in May of 2021, and I've been practicing in early intervention since then, working with patients ages 0 to 3 in their homes or their daycares. And in my free time, I run a blog called The Curly Clinician, where I share about my life as a PT and then some of my other passions outside of PT.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us tonight, Deja. We really appreciate it. Many students are kind of navigating whether they want to create like a PT social media presence or like use their personal accounts to share information on physical therapy. So we really appreciate having you because you're able to kind of give us a lot of insight and perspective, especially given the success that you've had with your account thus far. So I'll get started with our first question, and it's, what tips do you have for students who are just getting started with building their brand on social media?
That is a great question. So I'd say I'd start with figuring out like what you want to post about and like defining your why, because there's so many different avenues that you could go in. You could go in as a strictly like educational page and share like, exercises, which is what a lot of what I was seeing when I first created my account, which is not really what I wanted to do. I wanted to kind of share more of my personal journey through PT school and then as a PT, because that was something that I didn't see a lot of when I was applying. So that's kind of how I started my account. So I'd say define like your why and your niche or like what you want to talk about. And then the type of content that you want to create, the audience that you want to speak to. So do you want to speak to students? Do you want to speak to like the general public? If you're a pediatric PT like me, do you want to speak to parents? And then like what your mission statement is. So my mission statement is to for other people to empower healthcare professionals and people outside of healthcare to embrace the everyday and kind of live authentically. So just figuring out like who you want to speak to and what you want to say is how you can get started. And I feel like the best thing to do is just to start, because you can just ruminate and say like, oh, I don't think I'm ready yet. But just starting is the most important step, and then you'll learn along the way.
Can you also talk a little bit about like where you were in your PT school journey, or like if it was pre-PT, where you decided to kind of come up with the Curly Clinician, the brand itself, and then a little bit of like how you chose the name and what your brand stands for as well?
Mm-hmm. So I created my account maybe a month or two after I had found out that I got into PT school. It had been something that I was thinking about because like I mentioned earlier, when I was applying, I couldn't find a lot of information about other people's journeys like through and to PT school. I saw a lot of like med school and nursing and even PA, but the only PT accounts I was seeing like on Instagram were like just showing exercises. So I was like, maybe I can help fill that gap and just kind of share my journey, because I had to find out a lot of stuff on my own. And then also hoping to connect with some other PT students. So that's how I got started. And actually my first name was just Deja dot like the DPT. And then I was like, okay, that's a little basic. So I thought of something that was a little more creative. I have curly hair. So I was like, okay, like the curly clinician. And it kind of just stuck from there. And I initially just started sharing about like what I did to get into PT school. So like talking about my essays and the GRE and applying and stuff like that. And then it's kind of grown with me as I've gone through my journey. So then once I got into PT school, I talked about like what I did in PT school and studying and stuff like that. And then I think it was during my second or third year, I was getting kind of burned out of being in PT school all day and then coming home and talking about PT on the internet. So I was like, let's see if I can kind of branch out. And I've always loved like fashion and like lifestyle kind of content. So I started kind of going in that direction as well, because we're so much more than PT students and PTs. And I also wanted my brand to reflect that as well, and also have like another outlet to share things that I like.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I know that you mentioned around your second or third year, that's when you like deviated a little bit to kind of talk about more lifestyle content. For people that have decided maybe they still want to have a social media brand of some sort, but it doesn't need to prioritize PT at the forefront, can you share how you kind of like navigated entering into that lifestyle content space, and any other information that you could share relating to like how you reached out to these deals and brand partnerships that you've come across and things of that nature?
Yeah, so it was hard initially because I was like, wow, all these people followed me to like hear about PT school. So are they gonna actually care about other things about me? Like, are they just here for that content? So that was hard to kind of overcome at first. And of course I like lost some followers, but like the people who actually cared about me stayed around and, gave me some advice on stuff to share. But I'd say the big thing is following similar accounts that you like or that you want to be like. That was how I got a lot of ideas. So first I started following more like healthcare accounts that were also sharing lifestyle content, because that was like a good way to see how people were kind of balancing the two. And then I also follow a lot of accounts that are just strictly lifestyle, and then just figured out like the kind of content I wanted to share. And I feel like once I started sharing that more personal content, I started connecting with my audience more, which is like the best part of, being on social media is, the connections that you make. People have a lot of negative things to say about social media, but I feel like there are more positives than negatives if you use it the right way. So initially with brand deals, I didn't even realize that you can make money on Instagram. So like that wasn't, a lot of people make accounts these days like to be an influencer, and I didn't really know that that was a thing until I started my account. And some like medical related brands reached out to me to like send me free stuff, and I was like, oh, this is cool. Like I'm getting free stuff that I was already like purchasing with my own money and then sharing about it. And then as I started to follow those more lifestyle influencer types people, I learned more about like the influencer marketing industry and how much money there is into it. So I learned more about like how to reach out to brands and like the types of things you could provide for brands, and just how to, bring in an income on social media. So initially, brands were reaching out to me, so I didn't have to do a lot of the work, which is always nice. It can be kind of scary to reach out to brands on your own. And then once I kind of built up kind of like, they call it a media kit. It's basically like a resume for brand partnerships. Once I kind of built that up and had, brands that I've worked with on there and past work that I have done, I was able to reach out to brands on my own and say, hey, my name's Deja. This is the kind of content that I create. I think we'd be a good fit. Here's my media kit. I'd love to chat about, starting a relationship or a partnership with you.
Awesome. I'm gonna let Lisa share a question, and then we can kind of bounce back between that topic here.
Yeah, thanks, Danielle. Thanks, Deja. I'm just really curious about what your planning process looks like for your content. So do you just kind of post as you feel, or do you have a plan week to week or month to month for how you're going to build your content and kind of the areas that you're going to focus on?
So I feel like at the beginning, I had a more solid plan as I was getting started. I would like sit down once a week and say, hey, these are like the big topics that I like to talk about. Let me try to brainstorm some things that I want to, you know, share this week. And then maybe I'd make a whole list and I'd be like, okay, if I'm going to post 3 times a week, let's say Monday, I'm going to post about something PT related. Tuesday, I'm going to post about something like fashion related. And then like maybe Friday, I'm going to post about something like related to like home decor or something like that. So I feel like at the beginning, I was a little more structured. Now that I'm working and I have a lot more on my plate, it's kind of more spur of the moment. But also, I started my account in 2018 and Instagram was very different than it is now. It was a very polished place where like everything had to be perfect. Whereas now with like TikTok and stuff like that, you can kind of post more of that spur of the moment, like real life content, which I love because then I feel like I can create content out of my life versus like trying to make my life fit into my content, which has been nice. And it kind of takes that load off of, you know, trying to be perfect and make everything look perfect because, you know, nothing's perfect and people really appreciate that more in the moment content. So in a perfect world, I feel like I would still plan things out. I'm like that sometimes, but it's just been hard with working and Instagram and my blog have kind of taken a back seat. But then I'll get like small bursts of like energy where I like have all these ideas. So I feel like what's important is like when you do have an idea, writing it down somewhere so that when you do have that time to like sit down, you can really flesh out ideas and have like a master list of things to come up with. But I would typically only like plan things out like a week in advance. So I wouldn't plan out like a whole month of content. I would try to do it like week to week.
Did you ever try to do a month, or is that when you realized like that wasn't really your style?
Yeah, I've tried it before and I was like, I just can't think that far ahead. And also like, I don't really know what I'm going to be doing. So I try to think about like, okay, what am I going through now that I feel like people could learn from? Or like, what was I going through like at a certain time that I feel like would be helpful? And then like also based on like the time of the year and then like stuff like that, like MPTE time, I'll talk more about that. Or like right now it's like application season. So like I would talk more about that. So it just kind of depends.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that question, Lisa. That was also really good.
That was
Did you
great.
have a follow-up question as well?
Thanks. Well, I mean, I'm just kind of dying to know. Sorry, Elise, I see you've got your hand up too, but Deja, do you remember that first post where it just hit and you got like tons of interaction or response? Do you have one that kind of sticks in your brain?
Yeah, actually, it was during like 2020 when all of the like Black Lives Matter stuff was going on, and I posted about that, and that was really the first time I really spoke up about something that wasn't PT related. And I feel like that everyone was on their phone at that time, like everyone was just online, and that really took off. And I also had more time because I was at home and I was posting like every day, and that's where like my account grew from like I maybe had like 4 to 5K, and within a span of like 6 months I grew all the way to 10K just in that short amount of time. That's when I first started posting about like things I felt like that mattered. So yeah, that's kind of what started that.
Thank you so much.
Elise, we can hear from you now.
Hi, Deja. I'm Elise. I'm currently a third-year student at Temple University. And one of the questions that I had for you was, what are some of the tools that you use outside of Instagram to kind of help sustain your account? I'm currently in the process of starting a group DPT page with some of my other classmates. And so far, we've been using Canva, and that's helped a lot. But I'm curious to see what some of the other, I guess, apps or other software that other content creators are using to kind of sustain their page.
Mm-hmm. Canva is great. I love Canva. There's a lot of just pre-made stuff you can easily use, and you don't have to be like super creative, and you can use that. So I love Canva. For videos, like Reels and TikToks and stuff, I use this app called InShot. I feel like it's really user friendly. Like CapCut is very similar. Yeah, any kind of simple editing app for videos. And then I also have an app called, let me see what it's called, because there are a lot of different ones that are similar. The one I use is called Preview, but there are a lot of apps that let you like import your pictures to see like what your feed would look like. I used to use that a lot at the beginning when Instagram was more like polished, but now like don't really care what my feed looks like. I just kind of post what I want. But if you want to like move things around and see like, oh, does this picture look good next to this one, especially with like Canva stuff, it's nice to see if like colors look good. See what else I have on my phone. I use Google Drive a lot, just to like make like lists of things. I also use just my notes app in my phone for when I want to think of things quickly, and then kind of organize stuff on Google Drive. That's about it. I try to keep it simple because I feel like the more you use, you can kind of get overwhelmed, and it doesn't really matter what you use. You just find like whatever works for you. Like there are so many apps that do the same thing. So I feel like Canva is the big one, some kind of video editing app, and then maybe some kind of app where you can see what your content looks like, is good. And then I used to use Lightroom to put like presets on my pictures. I don't really post as many pictures that are like heavily filtered now. So I kind of just edit on the Instagram app and post from there.
So editing can take a lot of time and kind of coming up with the content, brainstorming, all of that. If you had to like ballpark estimate how much time you initially probably spent kind of creating, generating content and even like posting content, and maybe even compare that to how much you're spending now, what would you kind of say those numbers look like for you in a typical week?
Mm-hmm. It's hard because it just depends, like everything in PT. But I'd say like if I'm filming a video, that's like maybe 15 seconds to like 30 seconds to a minute. Maybe the filming will take like 30 minutes, but just depending on like what specifically I'm doing. Editing, I'm very like type A when it comes to editing, so that can take a while. That can take up to an hour sometimes, just depending on the type of video I'm making and how many clips you have to like organize and put together. Captions don't usually take me that long because I typically already know like what I'm going to say and just kind of type it out. But if I'm like just taking a picture, like that's super quick. You just take the picture, put a filter on it, and post it. I'd say like at the beginning when I was very consistently posting like every day, I take maybe an hour or two to plan like what I wanted to do for the week, and then just doing like a little bit every day. So maybe I'd do like 30 minutes a day, like preparing the post, putting the post up, and then trying to engage with the post. But it's hard to put numbers on it. So I'm sorry if that wasn't a super straightforward answer.
No, that's perfectly fine. I think sometimes it can be like people are very passionate about starting something, right? Like you like decide you want to come up with your brand or social media page of some sort, and then maybe we kind of can easily, at least I can speak for myself, underestimate how much time it takes for stuff, especially like a 10-second reel. It's like I just spent an hour on that, and then it's like I didn't even realize it was going to take me that long to kind of edit it to get it how I wanted it. And so that's why I was kind of just interested and curious to hear like how much time you spent initially, and then now that you're more like familiar with your process and style, does it like take you a lot less time? So that was still helpful. Thank you for that.
I'm now beginning. I mean, it still takes a lot of time, and I feel like a lot of people just see the final product and they don't realize like how much actually goes into it. I've definitely got better now because I have like my systems in place and I can like edit a video pretty quickly, but especially with like if you're doing like transitions and like trying to sync it to music, that can be very tedious. And then sometimes I get to the point where I'm like, these little things, like it doesn't really matter, and I'm just like, okay, I'm done, I'm just gonna post it, like it's okay.
Yeah. Especially being kind of like more like that type A perfectionist kind of mentality. So that makes a lot of sense. We're going to take one more question and then we'll have a brief break for announcements. And so since Frankie has her hand raised, I'll let Frankie ask her question.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I guess my question is more aligned with more of like the editing, but does it impact the brand deals that you go after, or how many do you have like a set amount that they tell you that you're supposed to have? And does that impact the way you pursue brand deals if they're like asking for a lot more than what you have the capacity for?
So are you saying like what they're asking me to post, like if they're asking me to post like a video or something like that?
Yeah.
Yep. So typically brands, like a typical brand deal will be like, they want you to post like one video and maybe like 3 story slides. Like that's like very typical, like a video and like 3 to 5 story slides. So I usually have like a set rate for that. And then anything outside of that, I kind of tweak. And then also like you can charge for other things. Like if they say, hey, like if you're working with like a lipstick brand, let's say you're working with like Fenty Beauty, they're going to say, hey, you can't work with any other lipstick brands for the next 6 months. So you can charge for that. They call it exclusivity. So you can say, hey, well, this is going to be taking away from potential, income that I could be making in other ways. If you want me to give you this exclusivity, you're going to have to pay me a little more. So that's something that you can also add in. How fast they want you to give them the content, that's also something you can charge for. So if they're saying like, hey, we want this next week, and that's a quick turnaround time, you can charge for, that short amount of time. How they want to, like how long they want to use your content, that's also something you can charge for. So a lot of brands will try to sneak in the contract, which is very important to read. Like they want to use your content, like they'll say we want like an irrevocable perpetual license, which basically means they can do whatever they want with your content forever and they don't have to pay you for it. So I typically try to say, hey, I can give you like usage rights for maybe 30 days after the content is live, or 45 days, something like that, so that they don't have access to your content and you see yourself on a billboard and you're not getting paid for that. Yeah, so basically what they're asking is based on like what I charge. And then they're kind of standard rates, but you kind of figure out like what you want to charge, like how long you feel like what you feel like your work is worth, and then also your time. Like if it takes, I just talked about how long it takes for content to be created, like that's important. So you need to factor that in for the content. Like even though you're only posting it once, there's so much behind the scenes that goes into it. Yeah, I hope I answered your question. I feel like I kind of rambled.
No, you did. Thank you. That was very helpful.
Okay, good.
I think everyone's kind of like silently scribbling down in their notebook things they didn't think about before. So this is great stuff. We're
Yeah.
gonna give you, what was that?
I was gonna say the most important thing is that like your work is valuable and companies have the money to pay you. So
Yeah.
they should not be getting free work out of you because it takes so much time and you should be compensated fairly for that.
I actually have one last question before we take like a brief intermission based on that. So I was gonna say, like, how did you kind of decide like what you were gonna charge? I think with any kind of small business, it's hard to decide like what's my rate gonna be, because one, you're thinking like, I don't want to lowball myself, but I also don't want to overcharge and scare people away from even booking with me. So what was your process like when you thought about, I'm gonna set this amount of content to be worth this amount of price type of thing?
So I think when I first like started looking into it, there was like a general rule. People were saying like a penny for every follower you have or something like that, but that's trash. Like that's not what you should be charging. So I kind of like asked around to other people that were willing to share with me like, hey, what are you charging? And then I kind of looked at, okay, what type of content are they creating? What is their audience like, and how big their audience is, and then you just kind of have to throw out a number. And that's what I started with. I just threw out a number, and if a brand says yes immediately, that means that you need to be charging more. So the more that I did it, I kind of just went up every time, and I'm like, honestly, I just say like, see how much I can push. And they're not going to say no, we don't want to work with you because you asked for too much money. They're going to say, hey, this is our budget, this is what we can give you, let's try to negotiate down. But I would say I would ask the brand what's their budget first, because if you say a number, like let's say you say, oh, I want $500 for this post. Let's say that their budget was $1,000. They're going to say yes to your $500, and you're never going to know that their budget was actually $1,000. So try to get them to say a number first. So I typically say, hey, what is your budget for the outline deliverables? So like the deliverables would be like one video and a story. So what is your budget for this? And then they typically say like, okay, this is my budget. And based on what my rate is, we'll always ask them for more than their budget, because usually they're giving you their lowest number and they're not going to give you their highest number. So the negotiation game is important, because you can go from a really small number to a really big number just by asking, because they're always going to try to get you to do it for the least amount of money. And I feel like I learned that the hard way when I realized how much other people were charging for the same thing. And I was like, oh, so that's kind of part of it. Like you learn as you go. And then you kind of get to like, I'm at a sweet spot now where I know kind of what to charge. And I just edit it based on like what they're asking for and how much I feel like how much work I feel like is going into it. But yeah, try to get them to say a number first is the most important thing. And then always ask for more, because the worst thing they're going to say is, no, we can only give you this. They're never going to be like, just kidding, I don't want to work with you anymore.
Yeah, Sophia dropped a comment that said, I feel like this is great business advice in general. And I think a lot of people struggle with salary negotiation, especially as a new grad. So applying the same principles there could easily be transferable, you know?
Yep. Have them say a number first. Don't let them, anytime you're filling out a job application and they're like, what's your desired salary? Put 0, because any number you put, they're gonna be like, oh, well, if we were gonna give you more than that, we're just gonna give you that number. So
Mhm.
always make them say a number first.
Great stuff. I'm going to put 0 next time. Alrighty, I'm going to let Sophia share a couple of announcements with us just to give you a chance to catch your breath and get some water.
Alrighty, guys. So we have a couple cool and exciting things coming up just next month. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is in honor of National Hispanic Heritage Month and PTA Day of Service coming up soon. You guys get to hear it first. Our September social is going to be focused on serving your community. So this event is planned for September 28th. That's Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we'll be joined by Doctors Afosa Guobadia, Bonnie Virag, and Celia Pechak for that event. It's going to focus on community engagement and volunteerism, pro bono services, and learning to communicate with people with limited English proficiency in order to best serve our local communities. So if you guys want to come out for that, keep an eye out on @APTA Students on Instagram and Twitter, or I guess as now known as X, for the registration link and for more information that should be coming out that month. And then another announcement we have also in September 20th through 21st, so a week before our social, the Flash Action Strategy is going to be going on. So for those of you who haven't heard of the Flash Action Strategy, that is a 2-day social media blitz where PT and PTA students from across the country engage in social media to raise awareness and contact members of Congress on a particular issue. So this year, we will be focusing our efforts on Optimizing Postpartum Outcomes Act, or HR 2480. And this bill will raise awareness of the availability and importance of pelvic health physical therapy for postpartum women, which, as we know, in the field of physical therapy is super important. And as an added bonus, just participating in the Flash Action Strategy counts for 10 points for your program in the Student Advocacy Challenge. So I'll drop links about more information about the bill, about Flash Action Strategy in general, and about the Student Advocacy Challenge in the chat in just a second if you guys want to learn more about that. Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you, Sophia. Those were all great things. I hope that everyone's enjoying the questions so far. Please remember that no question is like silly in this setting. If you have a question, please raise your hand and we'll try to make sure that you gain some insight from Deja while we have her here. All right, Deja. So another question I thought of with the topic of, charging and kind of like having more of like that tangible payoff from producing content. If you could talk a little bit about how investing in your brand has paid off for you, what are some things you would share kind of like that you've navigated throughout this journey that you've gotten from even creating your social media presence?
So when you say investing, are you saying like things I've bought that have helped me, or like just what I've gotten back from this whole journey, or both?
Honestly, that is like a twofold question. So if you feel like maybe you've had to put a lot of financial resources in some of these content creation things, that would be nice to know. But also just like the intangibles of like your time, networking, anything of that sort.
Mm-hmm. So I feel like it's a very like, you don't have to put a lot into it to see a lot of return now, which is awesome. So there's like a low like barrier to entry. I did end up buying a camera because I love taking pictures, and that was something that I had wanted to invest in. So that was nice. I also invested in my website. So paying for like hosting, which I just pay like yearly, and having my own domain link that's like thecurlyclinician.com, so people can know how to find me. That was helpful, to just have a blog and somewhere to keep like everything. And then when I want to ramble too much that doesn't fit on Instagram, I can write like a post once that I can share a million times and that can be used every year. So something like right now, a lot of students have been accessing my like essay, like how to attack the essay. So that's like something I wrote one time, and every year it's helpful. So it's kind of that evergreen content, where social media content only lasts like a few days. The content on my blog has lasted since I created it. So that's been nice to have something that people come back to all the time, that I only had to put in work one time, and it's just continuing to work for me. So that's been nice. I also, in 2020, I registered my business as an LLC, which wasn't that expensive, but it was just nice to have that protection and kind of get myself to be more serious about this being a business, because it is, and not just something I do in my free time. But really, the relationships I've been able to cultivate with others, and a lot of the opportunities, like being able to do this now, like I never would have expected when I was applying to PT school that I'd get to chat to chat with PT students on about like social media. So that's like been a big thing, just opportunities like that that I don't think I would have had access to if I didn't start sharing on social media. So really, the relationships and the networking has been great, and I've gotten to do a lot of cool things. I mean, I got to write an article for the APTA magazine this year, which is like a big pinch me moment. That was something really big. I've gotten to speak at like a local conference for students. That was really cool. So just things like that have been just really cool from social media, that I feel like were very rewarding.
Speaking about like relationship building, do you feel like you've been able to kind of have some open doors from some of the social media relationships that you formed, that maybe even people that like you haven't physically met before, but just like built a nice partnership or conversation with over the time that you've had your blog and your Instagram page?
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. I have so many like people that I've met through social media that I haven't physically met. And it's just been so cool to keep up with them over the years and get to know them. And then, when you do meet in person, like at conferences and stuff, it feels like you already know them. And it kind of makes those kind of things less scary, because you feel like you know people already. Like you and I have never
Yeah.
met in person, but like we've been connected
Right.
over the past few years through so many things. So things like that.
I think social media is just so helpful nowadays. I think a lot of times students, especially like with the topic of mentorship, are always like, how can I find a mentor? Like, what if there's like no one in my program that I physically can relate to or kind of want to guide me? And so I think people kind of probably underutilize social media in that respect. And so even with content creation, I'm sure that you've kind of gleaned from certain people that have been successful in this realm and kind of gotten some good advice on how to navigate that as well, right?
Mhm.
Alrighty, I'm gonna let Cassidy ask her question.
I just have two quick questions. First one, how do brands usually contact you? Is it like email? Do they somehow get your email? Is it through like social media that they want you to post on, or what?
So I keep my email in my like bio, because it's always better to chat via email. I feel like it's more professional, and like the brands are more serious if they're going to email you. Sometimes brands will DM me and say, hey, can we have your email address to send you some more information on this partnership? Typically, if a brand is just DMing me to work together, I'm like, they're not that serious, and I send them to my email, because I'm like, if you really want to work with me, then you can, email me. So I'd say try to keep it in the email, because real things don't happen in the DMs. They happen over email. Like they're going to send you a contract. They're going to have to send you like a contract and like things for you to sign and like documents. And that can't really be sent through Instagram anyway. So just getting them off of Instagram is going to be the best case scenario.
Okay, awesome. And then what did you post during school? You said you would post like things that you're doing in PT school, but can you just elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah. So I feel like I posted just like what I was doing. So like this week, we had this many exams, or I'm studying for this exam. Let's see, it was a lot of exams, just kind of like the everyday stuff, like what I was doing, what I was struggling with. Like if I was struggling with a topic, I kind of shared that, and just my experience like in school, not necessarily like helping others study for school, just more of like my perspective on my unique experience and like what I was going through.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Welcome.
I think it's great how there are so many student PT pages. I think it's kind of one, expanding the knowledge about PT to people who might not even be in physical therapy. And then two, just kind of like helping navigate that pre-PT market that a lot of people have questions about, and just like applications and things like that. So I find like even with my own social media, like just sharing like what we're doing in lab this week, or like how the semester is going, like you were saying, like your regular day-to-day stuff kind of resonates with people a lot, and they tend to become invested even in like the little and the small stuff as well.
Yeah, it just helps you not feel so alone. And you're like, okay, other people are going through,
Right.
and it's not just me. Especially when you're struggling. I feel like I've had like the things I was scared to share about, like my struggles and like my mistakes, have been kind of some of the most rewarding things. Like, I don't know if you guys know, but I failed my first attempt at the MPTE, and I was terrified to share that on social media because it made me feel like I wasn't good enough, like I wasn't going to be a good clinician. But sharing that experience really resonated with a lot of people, and now I'm able to help people who didn't pass on their first or their second attempt, kind of give them advice and then let them know, how to come back from that and how to in turn pass, and not letting a test define you. So I'd say, like, if you're comfortable like opening up about something that um maybe you wouldn't feel inclined to share, can have some really great rewards.
I definitely applaud you for that, Deja, because I think like vulnerability is something that's very hard for a lot of people, especially with social media being like everyone's literal highlight reel sometimes, where we just share like all of our successes. And a lot of the things that are able to resonate with people, like you said, that help kind of create that strong loyalty to your brand essentially, are the things that you fail at. And so that was amazing that you shared that.
Thank you.
I'll let Brooke also tag in.
Hello. Thank you so much for coming, Deja. This has been fantastic. Always great to hear insights. And I've been following you since you started, so always love like hearing from people. My question was, in terms of times where, times throughout since you've started your social media where maybe like you've been less motivated to post or have had a lot going on, like how have you managed, taking breaks, or have you had to do that? And like with doing that, like how was it coming back from it? Do you find that like the algorithm that made it hard for people to see your posts, and kind of how you've managed dips in your activity on social media?
That's actually perfect because I'm in like a little bit of a dip right now, and sometimes it can be hard to come back from, but I feel like the algorithm is pretty forgiving, and if you have like a loyal audience, like they're always going to be there. Like, and you think about it, like you're not, like you feel like, oh, I'm not posting, like am I going to be making people mad? But no one's really noticing. Like they're noticing when you post, but they're not like, hey, you haven't posted in 2 weeks, like what's going on? So I think it is important to take those breaks, and I feel like I always come back more refreshed when I do versus burning myself out trying to post just to post. I feel like quality over quantity always. Like if you are just posting just to post, it's not really going to resonate with anyone versus actually having something to say. So I'd say take a break versus just trying to churn out content when you don't feel like it, because people are going to be able to tell that you're just posting it just to post, and like you're not really in it. Um, but I try to follow accounts that inspire me so that if I am like scrolling, I can be like, oh, I like what they did, or this kind of motivated me. And that can kind of get you back into like, hey, let me start posting content again. Or just like sometimes I'll just scroll on the Reels tab and just see what other people are doing and then see if I can find some inspiration there. But just honestly giving yourself grace, because you're not going to be on your A game all the time, and trying not to compare yourself to others, especially people that do social media full time. Like you're also a healthcare professional, you're also doing other things, and social media isn't like your main source of income. So just remembering that it's okay to take breaks, and that it's going to be there when you come back. Like people say, oh, the algorithm is going to like blacklist me, but it's not. Like it's going to be okay.
Thank you, Deja. I think the quote I just thought about was like authenticity drives, success a little bit more than kind of like being like robotic with a lot of things in life. And so that's very helpful. I'll let Lisa ask her question as well.
I put my question in the chat just to give you a minute to ruminate if you had a chance to kind of read it. But who in the profession do you enjoy following?
I know, I was thinking. So hard.
Yeah, I figured it was going to be kind of tough, make you feel like you're on the spot, but I'd just be curious because I follow a couple of PTs and PTAs on social, and you know, it's pretty fun. So I was just wondering, or maybe where do you grab inspiration from? I mean, if it's outside of the profession, what kinds of posts and sharing kind of resonate with you and kind of give you that spark when you're kind of in a lull with your content?
I feel like, especially now, just in general, I like following people who are being more authentic, being more real, sharing the real life, because then that inspires me to also do the same and know that like I am enough and my life is enough and it's worthy of being on social media. Like it doesn't have to be perfect and stuff like that. I feel like I don't have a specific like person in the profession that I like following, but since I do work in pediatrics, I love following like pediatric accounts that post like exercises and stuff and like interventions to do with kids, because then I feel like I'm kind of preparing for work when I'm on Instagram. Like if I'm scrolling and I see, oh, this post, then I can look at it and be like, oh, these are good ideas. And it's been nice for me to have that because I do work in early intervention. So I work by myself. I drive to all my patients' homes and daycare. So I don't really have coworkers that I can go to when I have a question easily. Like I can email someone, but it's not like being in a clinic where I can say, hey, what do you think about this? So I feel like following similar providers as me on social media has been so helpful, because when I do have a question, they probably have answered it on their page, so I can go there and look for ideas. I feel like I like following the like I'm part of APT Pediatrics. I love following them, so then I can know like when things are going on. That's been helpful for like webinars and just joining like SIGs and stuff like that. But I don't think I have like a specific PT person. I just like seeing it so that when I'm on social media, I'm still kind of getting that and getting ideas without having to like actively search for it, which I can, but it's nice for it to just pop up and kind of spark things.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for plugging APTA section membership.
Oh yeah, it's very important, guys. Get it reduced like after you graduate. So it's been invaluable to me as a new clinician just to be a part of those groups, because they just do so much, like so much stuff that I didn't know about. Like I think this week I've gone to like 2 or 3 different just like webinars just from being a part of that section. So it's really important to be an APTA member, because there's just so many resources that you have access to. So your membership is well spent for sure if you use it.
Deja, you were pretty involved as a student, even with PT leadership and APTA leadership. And then even now as a clinician, I know you're still involved in different committees and task forces. Can you share a little bit about how you kind of find a little bit of balance? Because we know there's not always 100% or 50-50 balance with everything in life. But what strategies do you use to kind of decompress, find that middle ground, especially in high seasons where work might be very hectic? And I think you shared at the beginning when you started working, like it just was busy, a lot of documentation, things like that. So if you could talk about the way that you find balance, that'd be really helpful.
So as a recovering people pleaser, saying no has been really important to me, and really thinking about what I truly value and where I want my career to go versus just doing things because I think they'll look good on a resume or they'll look good to an employer. So really prioritizing what brings me joy, where do I see myself in the next 5 to 10 years, and what kind of things that I can do to get me there. But then also remembering that like I'm a human outside of a PT, like PT is not my only identity. So then remembering to do other things that I enjoy, like reading or like playing video games, hanging out with my family and friends. It's been hard to find balance, especially as a new grad, because you're so like, I want to be the best clinician I can be for my patients. But I experienced some burnout last year, and just remembering that if you're not at your best, your patients aren't going to be at their best, and you can't really take care of anyone if you can't take care of yourself. So trying to set those boundaries early rather than later, because it's so much easier to have that routine than to go backwards and be like, okay, I've overcommitted myself. How can I pull back? So really just thinking about what you find truly valuable, not what you think other people will think looks good or what you think you should be doing, what you truly want to do, because then I mean, it'll still be work, but it won't feel like something you dread because it's something that you actually enjoy. So yeah, I'd say pick the big things and don't just say yes to everything, because I did that as a student and it was not fun to have a lot on your plate to balance. So yeah.
Isn't it ironic that the first word well, not the first, but one of the first words we learn as a baby is the word no. And it's like the hardest word to say now. I just thought of that.
So hard. It's so hard because you don't want to let people down, or you don't, and you just can't be everything to everyone. So
Mhm.
really thinking about what is best for you and then kind of going from there, versus what is best for everyone else, which is hard, especially because we're in a giving profession. We want to help people, but we're our most important patient. So remembering to take care of yourself is just so important.
Awesome. Elise, I'll let you ask your question as well.
Yeah, so to kind of diverge a little bit, so I feel like I remember a time when social media was just a thing, that like a no-no thing within like the corporate kind of like work setting. And now like just it's been transitioned into like a thing where it can be a valuable asset for you and your professional development. So I guess I wanted to ask, like, is there some level of like a boundary that exists between like your social media presence and then like your work setting, your workspace, or is that something that you kind of bring up on the job whenever you're interviewing? How do you navigate that? Yeah.
That's a great question. So it's something I put on my resume because I don't want it to seem like I'm hiding it. So I put that, I have a blog, I have an Instagram, and like what I do. It hasn't really come up in any interviews, but I haven't done that many interviews because I've been at my same job since I graduated. But as a general rule of thumb, like, HIPAA, I don't really talk about specific patient scenarios or anything like that. I don't share where I work, but I have a LinkedIn, so if people search my name, they can find it, but it's not something I actively like put on social media, and I don't show like my name tag and stuff like that because people can be kind of crazy. But I'm like, at the end of the day, if someone wants to find you, they will, but I don't like actively say like, hey, I work for this company. I just try to keep those things separate because I don't want like my social media presence to represent like that company. But yeah, like if it comes up in an interview, like I try to use it because it's something that's important to me and it's a big part of, what I do. So I do bring it up. It's not something that I like try to hide because I think it can be really valuable. So, and I don't like use any profanity on my account. So it's not like I have anything worth hiding. I try to keep it pretty professional while also acknowledging the fact that I'm a human and, I'm going to do human things. But yeah, I hope
Yeah,
that answers your question.
absolutely. Thank you.
That was a great question, Elise. I think a lot of times, like thinking about like, do I want to present myself a different way on social media or like the same way? I know we're talking about authenticity, but sometimes these questions do come up internally where it's like, all right, which side of myself am I going to allow them to see? Like, am I going to allow them to see all of me or just like 80% and kind of like keep it kind of tailored to PT? And so I think everything that you've shared has kind of just inspired us to kind of just like do what makes you happy and also kind of just share and live like for yourself and not for other people. I think that comes down to like the whole lifestyle content thing and just knowing that people are going to kind of cling to you for you and not like what you portray to be in a fictional sense, if that makes sense. So I love how everything's kind of just coming full circle and everything is tying in together.
Yeah. And I
Would
feel
you
like,
think, I'm sorry.
I feel like being vulnerable and authentic shouldn't be like punished. Like that doesn't make you unprofessional or like a bad person. Like it makes you human. And I feel like I've had instances where sharing that has been helpful versus harmful.
Have you found yourself being able to kind of talk to your patients? Well, I know that a lot of your patients are pediatric, but like your families of patients and kind of share like maybe some of your social media things, maybe like resources and accounts that they can follow for things they can do at home, or just kind of like information that they might want to stay up to date with so that they can keep on with their family education and interventions on a home level.
Yeah, I share a lot of like big accounts that I like with my families. And that's been helpful because then, when they're scrolling on their phones, they can see stuff and they'll send me stuff and be like, oh, like, what do you think about this? Like, can we try this out? So that's been cool too.
Awesome. I just want to remind everyone that we are going to be winding down in a couple minutes here. So if you have any final questions, please feel free to raise your hand or drop them in the chat. I do have another question. Oh, Sophia, go ahead.
So this is kind of branching off of Elise's question. Something that I've been struggling with recently recently graduating and applying for PT jobs is I kind of have this like dual split of my interests as well, where I like love being a strength coach and I love being a PT and I wanted to do both. And I can imagine like with you, with your like content creation and like being a full-time PT as well, it can be kind of hard to like balance those things and like apply to a job and express that you also do this other thing. So anyway, long story, but I basically wanted to ask, how do you like navigate in the application process and like job interviews of like kind of explaining that you kind of want to do both without looking like a bad applicant because you will have less time to dedicate to your PT jobs, if that makes sense.
I guess I really haven't had to run into that specific issue, but like, are you saying that you also want to do like strength training on the outside of being like a PT?
Yeah, just like generally having other interests on the
Mhm.
side that you'll have to balance with PT.
I mean, as long as you're fulfilling your job duties, like what you do in your free time is what you do in your free time. So, yeah, I mean, I guess you can express your interest in it, but I don't think they're going to be like, hey, you have this interest. Like, is that going to take away from, your responsibilities at work? Like, I hope that makes sense.
It does. Thank you.
Like, it's totally, you're going to, it's possible to balance the two. Just as long as like one doesn't start taking away from that first priority of, work. That's what's most important.
We'll go with Frankie next.
Thank you. Touching on, I guess, a little bit of what I asked earlier, do you have specific content for newbies who want to get in the industry of, I guess, social media on like just exactly what you were talking about, like all of that legal jargon would kind of scare me. So do you have like content on how to navigate that, or do you have any suggestions on how to navigate it?
Yes, I have a few blog posts that I can pull up that have a lot of that stuff. And I can also like direct you to other people that I've learned from, because that has been just so nice to learn from people who have already gone through it. And that's how I learned a lot of what I know. And then, yeah, I can put together some resources that you guys can send out.
Thank you for that. I know that can be your prized possession, but like your
No, I love
transparency
to
is
share.
best.
If I've already written it, that's the good thing. It's like I've already written it. So I want people to see it. I don't want it just to be there. I want people to use it because it was hard figuring it out on my own. So if I can help someone else not have to go through that, like that's great.
And I think sometimes with social media, it can be, people can feel like it's a little bit of a competitive atmosphere. I think anytime you have like a business of some sort, especially if you're not someone who is creating something brand new and some other people are doing what you offer or say you do, it can be kind of hard to kind of make sure that you feel like it doesn't have to be a competitive spirit and you can share like what's made you successful or things that you wish you knew, just because kind of like building one another up helps make the profession as a whole look a lot better, or just like the content that you're trying to create look a lot better and be able to reach people in a more authentic and genuine way like you've been talking about. So that's definitely appreciated.
Yeah, I mean, we all have our own, we're all unique. So how I experience something is going to be different from how you experience it. And like other people, you can tell the same thing to multiple different people, but maybe your voice is what makes it stick for them. Like, there are a lot of people, there's so many like Instagram coaches, but like, if you don't feel personally connected to that person, you're not going to learn anything from them. So you have to find, what works for you. So just remembering that even if you feel like you're sharing something that someone has already shared, there's only one you, and you're gonna have your unique lens and your unique twist on it. So it's still worth it's still worth it and it's still valuable. And someone, even if it's just one person, is going to benefit from that. So just posting, and it's hard, easier said than done to just post, because sometimes I still struggle with just posting. And sometimes it feels like the things that you post on the fly and you don't put as much work in, like as much thought into, and you just post, like end up doing the best. So just kind of trying to live in the moment, and then remember that you are important and your voice matters.
I love that. I have one final question, unless someone else would like to ask a question. My question is going to kind of be related to a little bit of the resources again. Do you feel like you took a lot of social media branding classes, or did you steer away from more of like those master classes that people tend to offer? And then a little bit of a tangent on that is, did you ever use like scheduled content posting websites, if that makes sense, like something that automatically posts for you once you created the content?
I never use automatic scheduling because I feel like I'm too type A, and I feel like I would be like, oh, it's not going to post. So I just like doing it myself, because then I'm posting and then I know that I have the time to interact with the content right then and there, versus just posting and then not being able to, see how it's doing and reply to comments and stuff. So I like doing it myself. I'm gonna just set like a reminder in my phone, like post this Instagram post, or just put it on my calendar. And I try to steer away from a lot of those like master classes, because I feel like they're always trying to get you to spend more money. So I tried to find as much free content as I could. And I invested in a few at the beginning, and they were helpful, but from my experience, a lot of them can be kind of scammy. So I'd say try to find those people who are willing to tell you what's really up. And then of course, like compensating people for their time, but I'd steer away from those like really big ones. And there's a lot you can find on Google. Like I found out a lot for free. You just take the time to search it. It's up there. You might have to do a lot of digging, but it's possible to figure it out on your own.
Well, I hope everyone walks away tonight feeling empowered about something, even if you don't have like a social media presence of some sort, maybe just the idea of working on a new idea or passion project, and kind of figuring out how you're going to tailor that and share that with your patients, or even things related outside of PT. Just feeling confident about kind of sharing who you are and making sure that you're marketing yourself and not just like a product, and helping people connect with you as a person. So thank you so much, Deja, for joining us tonight. And if you don't mind, we'd love if you could share like a social media handle or email address, or anywhere you want to direct people that have any other questions that they weren't able to ask on this Zoom.
Yeah, I'm going to put my Instagram in the chat, and then also my blog, and then my email as well. Probably gonna get me via email versus Instagram DMs, because sometimes things get lost in the Instagram DMs, and I feel really bad because I'll see something like a month later and I'm like, I never saw this. So if you email me, it's much easier for me to see it and to find it and to actually reply. Yeah, I think that's everything.
Yes, I see all of those. And just wanting to clarify, we can find your handle on Instagram. Do you have any other platforms that you're migrating towards, or you want to keep it just on Instagram, right?
My TikTok is the same as my Instagram, but most of it, like right now, I'm just reposting what I post on Instagram onto TikTok, because that's a whole nother beast that I have yet to master. But I'm more active on Instagram, so that's where I'm posting more.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining. I really appreciate everyone's participation and interactivity, if that's even a word. But thank you for interacting with us and like sharing your questions. I hope you all took away a lot of lessons tonight, and have a great rest of your week.
Yeah, thanks for being here, guys. Thanks for having me.